So again, welcome everyone. This is our Signs of Spring Activities with Young Children webinar. My name is Rob Peo. I'm Director of Youth Education. And Judy, you want to introduce yourself?
And my name is Jungle Judy Elliott, and I'm the Senior Education Specialist. Glad to be with you all.
Yeah, we have lots of activities for you and lots of recommendations for books and other things for young children. And without any further ado, let's get started. Judy, it's the beginning of a new season. Always a good time, right?
So I think the thing that I love most about the beginning of a new season are the things that we almost miss. We don't see because maybe they're hidden underneath leaves or flowers are just starting to emerge. So, walking around with your children and looking for signs of, even before the leaves come out, emerging buds. So those little things that we miss signal the excitement of new growth to come. And one of the books that I most love is a book that I read to, I've got 5 grandchildren now, and I read it to all of them, and it's called One Tree. And I love One Tree because it follows the life of a tree through all 4 seasons. And it shows the incredible life from the leaves first emerging to the blossoms coming, to them opening, to the wonderful pollinators that come, the birds and the bees, and even pollinated by the wind. And then if we're lucky enough, sometimes the fruit that comes. And then as the season goes along, it follows that tree as it changes and the different animals and birds and insects that attract it. So during spring, the branches, as you can see, one tree grows in the meadow, its branches stretch tall and wide. In springtime, it grows many new buds. Flowers grow from those buds on the tree, and then the bees gather pollen from the flowers to make food. Wonderful book that I'd love all of you to get to know.
And another book that you might be interested in is The Snail Spell. And this is tied to an activity from Life Lab. They're out of California. They're a really good go-to place for garden education activities and lessons. And they have one lesson called Garden Creatures, where you make creatures and place them in the garden. This is a way to get kids excited by making a creature just out of craft materials. And you take that creature and you bring it to the garden with you every time that you go into the garden. The book, The Snail Spell, is about a boy who has magical powers who can get really small. All of a sudden, he gets so small that through this spell, the snail spell, he gets as small as the creatures that live in the garden, down in the dirt. And so you can make a creature. Our bilingual program coordinator, Paulette Thomas, made these creatures, which I just think are just lovely. Look at these made out of clothespins. And I wonder how many kids actually know what clothespins are anymore. Anyways, she made these, and you can imagine, kids making these and taking them with them as a garden friend, a garden creature friend. And then when they go with everyone, when they leave the garden, they take them with them so that they always have a garden friend with them. So that's one activity that is a really easy one, just to get kids to identify with the garden and get excited about being there. And like what we've been talking through our webinars is the opportunity for kids at this age to encourage that sense of wonder, to cultivate that sense of wonder. And by slowing kids down to observe. So if I'm going to take my garden creature, that's going to help me to observe down into the ground. And we're going to spend time looking at things. And as I start to slow down and look at things, I start to question, I start to wonder, what is happening? How can I investigate that? How can I learn more? And as I go through that process, I do learn. So I observe, I wonder, I learn. And all the activities and books that we are going to talk about today, we'll try our best to tie into that framework of learning. Judy?
Yeah, do you have, so what I love about this is that this explores the world from the point of view of what can children teach us? Not so much what can we as tall adults who know everything teach them. So when we're present to the wonder and the joy that children provide to us, and we approach the children with the idea that they are really our teachers, then we um, kind of listen in to the wonder and the joy that they have to teach us. So we learn to bend down, we learn to turn over every leaf, and we learn that children really live in the present moment. You know, whatever they see becomes their world. So when we see with the eyes of a child, then we're open to that sense of wonder and joy, because they don't come with any kind of preconceived notions of what they should do or what they shouldn't do. So that sense of wonder and joy and becoming a childlike being in the face of learning allows full, engaged, experiential knowledge to occur.
Yeah, so well said, Judy. And I love this picture because that look on that girl's face, like,
Wonderful.
what in the heck is that?
And this is a hummingbird that normally would be up in flowers. And this provokes all kinds of feelings. I wonder what that little bird is feeding on. Why is he so tiny? Why are his colors so bright? Why is his bill so long? What does he eat? So it allows the child in a way to be a teacher and to direct our knowledge to what our understanding to what's important to them in their world.
Mhm. And
And
you
this
found
is
some discoveries too, right, Judy?
so this discovery, actually, people, I shared from my garden, and this came a week ago, and I almost missed it. And it was in my perennial bed, a bed of flowers that's dormant for the winter, and underneath a good blanket of leaves, here are the leaves of the crocus emerging, and the soil is nice and protected, and that first wonderful sunflower open to the new season that lets us know on that first burst of sunshine, there's more to come if we only look with open eyes.
Yeah,
What
and
a
the
wonderful view before. Yeah,
yes,
I think before all the other flowers come in too,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
that first flower, that first green leaf, that first green shoot. It only happened because I got down on my tummy and I crawled among the leaves. So I said, "Oh, where that
Oh,
lovely
Judy.
leaf comes from."
I want a picture of that too. You crawling on your tummy.
Well, that's what produced that wonder. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, this is a close-up picture, so it's easy to spot. But really, if you actually saw the original picture, it's this tiny little dot. And yeah, you could go quickly without noticing. And that's that whole notion of slowing down. Then if we actually, spend time repeatedly going to the same spot, what kind of things can you notice as time goes by?
And Rob, just going back quickly, when you mentioned, can you go back a moment to that slide? Go
With
back one slide if you
yeah,
don't
sure.
mind.
To
So
the
when you go back to that, or even the crocus, if I were a snail, that snail's book that Rob brought out, I would have seen that right away.
yes,
That would have been
right.
my world. Okay. So exploring nature, not from a fully open, fully realized field, but to realize that what we almost don't see is the beginning of a whole season of new growth and possibilities. So
Mhm.
get down and look closely.
Yeah, and to take that point of view of if I'm a snail and I'm going to observe something, I need to get really, really small and I need to get down low into the ground to notice things. So yeah, that's great. All right. And one activity to do that is magic spot, right, Judy?
Yeah. Now look at that wonder in the face of the squirrel. I wonder, he is just stopped and he is just observing something. He is tuned into that spot. So what I would encourage you to do is to find a spot with a child and have the child go back and back over that spot over time. And you can find, as we'll show you in a moment, you can find evolving colors that change. You can look at paint spots over the season. These are just some ideas. You can go on a color scavenger hunt. You can even pick up pieces of paint chips at a paint store and ask your child to go find that same color in the garden. The most important thing is to use that same spot. Have a child pick a spot that for them is just magic. It's peaceful. It tunes out the noises of the outside world. And then have them sit on the ground and they can draw things they see, and they can draw things in that same place a couple of weeks later, and they can measure it with a stick and see how it's changed. How has the color changed? How has the shape changed? It really becomes their own spot, which is safe and peaceful, where they can really tell you, I've observed this spot and I've wondered about the changes. And this is what I've learned about that spot. This is mine.
And now we're gonna watch a video of growth here. Judy, do you want to say anything before we play this?
Well, again, this brings out the idea of some of the most important things that happen are not things that we see above ground. So this video is going to discuss how peas germinate, but the most important thing is not what you see above ground. This video will take you through just an examination of the first roots growing and then the shoots and the leaves, and it's just magic. So we're going to watch this as we play it.
And Judy, I realize I didn't put the music, so that's too bad, but it's okay without the music because
it's okay without the music.
Yeah,
it's very
okay. Yeah, because it's spectacular enough just to view this. So, oh, I did get the music.
Okay, and the first thing happening is that first baby root. The coat of the pea is breaking through. The first root is going underground, and look, here is the first shoot coming up. Oh, look at it, look at it, look at it, it's unfolding. The first baby root. Kids are mesmerized by this. I'm mesmerized by this. And look how deep that root goes down in the ground. And you can see on the left-hand side, oh, look at more. Oh my goodness. It emerges, and when it comes to the sunlight, it starts making its own food. The leaves turn green. The familiar pea leaves open. Pretty amazing. And now, if that doesn't get into wanting you to grow with your children, I don't know what else will. Magic of growth and germination is, but again, it's what goes on that you don't see.
Right. The first signs of growth can't be seen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But now we're going to play a game. We're going to play Name That Root. I know this is your favorite game, ladies and gentlemen. So you're all welcome to participate. And actually, we're not going to name the root. What I want you to do, I invite you to make some observations about what you notice about this root. I'm only going to show you a part of a root, and type in the chat what you observe. And if you have any wonderings, type those in too. So you ready for your first root? It's time to play Name That Root. So I'm going to show you a portion of a root here. And as you look at this, describe what you see and type it in the chat. So we'll look for who's going to be brave enough to type in the chat here. Let's share your observations of what you notice. I need game music here. Dun, 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 dun. Megan says many different roots, not just one. Oh, Amy says they're stringy and dense. Karen says thin, hairy looking roots. Lots of smaller roots. Very good descriptive ways. I noticed large roots with small things coming off. Okay, very good observations. Does it make you wonder about something? Marina says they're dry looking. Yeah, I would agree with that. Judy did some scavenging. Como pelos, yes.
We'll describe that.
That's right.
We'll describe that one. Oh, como pelos, yes.
All right. Any of the other versions? Many thin and long. Yeah, there's a lot of them, aren't there? Okay, so some plants have a lot of roots that branch out sort of in this way, like looking like hair. There's thin ones coming off as you described. Let's take a good look at what this is. Okay, yes, it's very hairy, and it actually comes from a plant that grows just wandering out on the street. You'll see it. It's annual bluegrass.
So I actually dug this. This is called a warm season weed. And I dug this from in front of our office downtown Denver on a day right after snow. Nobody believed me. And I took it inside and I washed its roots. So you can see it's just starting to grow. You can see all the green. It's called a warm season annual, and by June, it probably will be 2.5 feet tall and will have fulfilled its life and it will die.
Mhm.
But I love this plant because it grows early on in the season. I've also done fun things. I didn't share this with Rob beforehand to get kids to understand what these roots look like. I've taken the root after I've washed it like this, and I put it on my head. And I said, so what does that make you think of? And they said, Miss Judy, it looks like your hair. And I said,
Mhm. Como
very
pelos.
good. Hair-like roots that spread out in many directions. So, being able to describe also what roots look like to children, what have you seen in nature that looks like that? It's a really good activity to go. And then
Well,
so we have annual bluegrass. Anything else you want to add, Rob?
well, and just the question, why would you want as a plant, why would you want to have many thin, long roots, as Nune said? Why would they look like hair? What's the advantage of having that? Thin, hairy looking roots, like Karen says, and stringy and dense, like Amy said so descriptively. What's the advantage of that? As opposed to another root that we're going to look at. So here we go. Lack of water, Bill says. So maybe that's why they want, it's like, I can't count on one root. I got to count on as many roots, more chances to suck up water, Marina says. Yeah. So those are the kinds of questions we can start to investigate. Why is it? So here's a different root, and we're still playing Name That Root. So get your descriptions, better grip to the soil. So Gail says, oh, this is a thick singular root. How else would you describe it?
And think about it also. Here's another thing that I would like to put out to people. If you were describing this in the words of a child, how would you describe this? What does it look like to you?
Mm-hmm. Bill says it probably goes deep. Michaela says much thicker and stiff looking. Yeah. And so how would it? Thick yellow, harder, Alma says. Mm-hmm. Looks like thick spaghetti. Yes, there you go.
I love that.
A walking stick. Upside down. That's exactly what I thought. An upside down tree. Yeah.
I love that.
All right. Well, let's take a look at our root here a little bit more, and you can see, whoa, these roots are very different from the annual, the annual grass, the bluegrass that we saw earlier. Yeah, I love the walking stick. Yeah, that's right. So what kind of plant does this come from?
Oh, Rob, may I insert something if you don't mind?
Please do.
Looking at that picture again, you want to know what that kind of, this just came to me. This almost looks like the feet of an ostrich or something like that, walking along the ground. Or a wild turkey. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that wrinkly sort of, yeah. And this is what it comes from. And this is probably growing somewhere near you because it just grows everywhere. Judy, you want to talk about mallow?
Yeah, so, we talked about annual bluegrass. This is which had the roots that look like hair. And mallow is a tough perennial, meaning its leaves may die back, but its root keeps growing. And it's a cool season perennial. It's actually related to hollyhocks, the flowers that we grow. But cool season perennial, meaning it's growing right now. So if you want to get rid of it, you don't want it to take over your garden, you need to start digging it now. So very different roots. And this one will last year to year.
It's not going away. That sucker, although, it crossed Judy's path and she got it. So
I got it out, but only because it was the same time when I dug out the annual bluegrass.
That's right. That's right. I came into the office and I saw these plants on my desk. And I went,
I had presents for Rob.
I know who got those. So yeah. So here's a question: how can a plant grow in a crack in the sidewalk? Judy, you have anything else you want to add to that question, or?
Yeah. Well, if you look at that mallow root, that long, tough mallow root, it can access water and very little nutrients in any crack that it finds. And it is tough. I had mallow and another herb which is actually called lovage, which is related to celery. Let me describe the lovage. The lovage has a similar type of root, and it is the first plant to emerge in my garden. It grows in my perennial garden next to my driveway, but the first place it comes up is not in the perennial garden, but in a large crack in the driveway. And it just erupts. It's like a volcano. You don't see it, and all of a sudden it's just like 8 inches tall. And if you think about it, sidewalks, cement collect heat. So the soil underneath that is warmer, and the taproot can go down really deep to access water and nutrients. So unlike the root of the annual bluegrass, which is kind of goes near the surface, look at the root of that mallow. It can go down really deep before it starts to branch. So it's got the one thick root that can go down in the crack, and then the side feeder roots for nutrients. So it has adapted survival strategies. And if you leave this mallow long enough in one place, its root really will become almost as thick where you need a pitchfork to dig it out with. It is huge. It increases in size. It's there to stay.
It's not going away.
It's not going away.
I'm always, Judy, like when I go hiking, like, up a 14er and stuff, and you look at the plants that exist in rocks, and like how much survival, they survive so many, they withstand so many things.
Similar to mallow dandelions that most people know have got similar type roots. So a taproot, if you try and dig out dandelions and you don't get all of the root, it breaks, and that's a signal to the plant. They didn't get all of me. I'm going to produce more.
I'm going to keep going. Yeah. And does it actually get stronger?
Well, they just produce more. Yes, they do.
Produce more.
They do, because you remove the top growth. So anytime that you're trying to dig out a mallow or anything with a taproot, one of the things that I like to do is work with kids in a group and have them do a group activity. How can you work together to dig out this root really carefully, have them gather together in a circle and work really carefully with shovels so you're not going to break the root. Amazing what happens when you get group activity.
Esmeralda was saying that she had a cantaloupe grow in a crack this last summer. That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I taught a class with some kids, and this one girl had talked about how they grew a squash. They cultivated it and they just kept an eye on it, and she just was like amazed that they actually got something to grow through that crack. Julie's asking if mallow is poisonous, Judy.
No, it is not poisonous. So actually, mallow is sometimes used as a tonic. Some of the juice in the stems can be used to heal wounds. So it's not poisonous, but it's not really tasty.
No.
Unlike dandelion that you can harvest early and is really high in calcium and iron, and you can use in young salads, spring salads. But I would not advise eating mallow.
Yeah. So this exercise of Name That Root actually sort of calls out two main types of roots that are out there. We saw with the grass, the annual bluegrass, that hairy, long strands. That's called a fibrous root. And there are plants like lettuce, rice, corn, and grass that have those types of roots. And then there are taproots like the mallow that go deep, deep, deep down, but it's a thick root. And they're called taproots. And we know carrots are a root that we actually eat. Judy was talking about dandelions, and beets are also taproots. So those are the two main types. There's another subcategory, but if you divide them out, they break out into these two main types. And they serve different purposes in terms of how they support the plant in survival. And each of them is a good mechanism, trading one off for the other. If I have a deep, thick root, I can go further down. If I have fibrous roots, I'm going to spread myself out and allow for more access that way. Now, we've got a poll here. You've been kind of mentioning these things, but I'm going to call the poll up. And what is the job of a root? So I've posted the question here. Roots helps a plant to absorb water and nutrients from the soil, anchor a plant into the soil, store food and nutrients, transport water and minerals to the plant. What is the answer? Ding, 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 ding. We've got the numbers coming in. I don't think I'm going to stump you on this one.
Everybody got it right?
Well,
what do we have?
One more second, and then I'll let people. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. Here we go, and we're going to share the results. And everybody said,
"Oh no way!"
Well,
fabulous teachers, all of the above.
And Gail said E too. Yes, I couldn't stump you on that one. Yeah, all these are functions of roots to stabilize, to bring in water, in particular water and nutrients, and to bring them into the plant itself. So very good. You got our poll question, and that is.
And before we go to the next one,
yeah.
if you think about roots like carrots and beets, they actually store carbohydrates, sugars in the roots.
Exactly.
Which is why they taste so sweet.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good point. Yeah. And this is something, you could do this as an activity with kids, is to look at different types of roots. You can go to the grocery store and get live lettuce, and it has that fibrous root at the bottom there. If you buy garlic, you'll see the little roots coming out there. And of course, carrots, you'll see them as well. So that's another activity you can do with studying roots. But now we're going to play another game here of guessing what roots. Judy, do you want to explain this, or you want me to?
Sure. So we're talking about early season greens that live in, and that's usually salad greens that live in the cool season, April or so, late March, April. And we're looking at number 1 that has some of those shallow type of roots. And we're looking at number 2, which is probably giving it itself away right now, which has more of a long root going down. And then we're looking at number 3, which is also a salad green, which might be a little trickier, which is a nutrient storehouse. It's dark green. Sometimes we find it crinkly shaped leaves. Sometimes they're smooth. We use it in smoothies and salads. It has a long taproot, and then it has some of those fibrous roots coming out. So just from what we've talked about and from the roots, we're going to ask you to type your guesses, what these plants might be in the chat, what number 1 might be, what salad green or salad vegetable number 2 might be, and what we might have for number 3. Let's see what type of answers we get.
We're getting answers here. Lettuce, radish, spinach, lettuce, radish, chard, lettuce, radish, kale. So it seems like number 3 is sort of the one that people are sure about. And yeah, I kind of, it's kind of like I kind of did too much of a reveal for number 2. So I kind of gave that one away. Monica says lettuce, radish, kale. So like it sounds like people are just not sure about that third one. So we're going to reveal what we have here. We have lettuce, which was pretty easy considering we talked about that. I don't think I stumped anybody with number 2. That is indeed radish. I had some radishes for lunch. They were quite yummy. Number 3, spinach. And
spinach is almost a telltale. When you pull spinach up, it does have that red color on the roots. So, good guess with chard though. That's another early season salad green.
And these are all early season, but in terms of planting seedlings, it's easier to plant lettuce, isn't it? From you, there's a difference because of the taproot, right, Judy?
Right. So when we're doing, all of these things are best planted directly seeded. Okay, directly seeded in the garden. And sometimes you'll go to a garden center and find things like transplants of chard. Anytime that you're looking for a transplant, it's best not to buy a transplant of a root that has a taproot. So spinach is best directly seeded as a seed,
As a
radish
seed.
is a seed, lettuce is a seed. Yeah,
Yeah.
easy for early season.
Well, and they grow fast, and you
They
can
grow
get,
fast,
yeah,
and
you
you
can
can get a
get,
harvest before school ends, which is
yeah,
lovely.
yeah. So these are nice things that if you're in a school garden to grow.
Right.
Now, when we're talking about the roots and the tops, there's a great book called Tops and Bottoms. I love this book. It's a trickster rabbit tale of a rabbit and a very lazy bear. And I'll just give you the top level of what this story is about. So it has these beautiful illustrations, and what they're talking about in terms of tops and bottoms is the things that grow up on the top of the plant and the things that grow on the bottom. And the rabbit is very clever because he said, "Hey, bear, I want to go into business with you and start a farm." And the bear's like, "Oh, okay, well, as long as you do all the work," because he's a lazy bear. I That sounds good. And so the rabbit says, "All right, well, I will. I'll make a deal with you. I'll get the tops of the vegetables that we grow, and you get the bottoms." Now, being clever, you can guess what kind of plants that the rabbit grew. All right. So what kind of plants do you think he grew? Type in the chat. What do you think he grew? Because he wants to be at the advantage of, oh, Karen, you read the book? Yeah, it's a beautiful book.
Oh, no fair, Karen.
Lots of leafy greens, maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what Amy says.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
I think
So
so.
so if you remember, he's going to get the, wait, which one is he getting? I can't remember what he's
I think
getting.
he's getting the tops, no?
He's getting the bottoms,
Oh,
actually.
he's getting the bottom. Oh,
So he's actually growing carrots and beets, those taproots that we've been talking about. And I'll just give you the leafy parts of the greens, like Amy says. And the bear wakes up because, of course, he's been sleeping all of the time. And he says, "Oh, this is a really terrible deal." And the rabbit says, "Oh, you're right. You're right. Let's switch the deal. I'll take the tops and you take the bottoms." But of course, he's growing other vegetables. He grows celery and broccoli and cabbage, all of which grow up on the top of the surface. And he gave him all the roots. Well, the story goes from there, and you can imagine that the rabbit once again tricked the bear. But it's a beautiful, great book, and it's a nice way to introduce the idea of when we grow our vegetables, we eat different parts, some of which are in the tops and some of which are in the bottoms. And speaking of the bottoms, we have this root view cups activity. Judy?
hey, and this is one of my favorite activities. So this is a way that you can work with your children where you can actually see the root growth. And I want to put a shout out for the wonderful, our junior educator, the daughter of a volunteer coordinator, who helped me with this activity. And I'm just, no, you can't see it. But what we have done is I started some lettuce seeds in some very small containers, and then I transplanted with the part of a spoon, a lettuce transplant when it had 2 true leaves into it, into a plastic cup in which I had put some seed growing mix, not outdoor soil, and I had punched. I just use a knife, I believe, and I cut a couple of holes in the bottom for drainage. And additionally, what I did, you can see on the left, is a black piece of paper or construction paper. You can use whatever type of paper you want, wrapping paper, to cover the cup while it's growing, while the roots are growing, because of course roots growing underground don't get exposed to light. So we want to give them the condition that they would get outside. As the roots grow, we can take that paper off, and Zia is lifting up the cup to see the holes in the bottom and to see it growing out. This is a very young transplant, so you can't see. If you look closely, you may be able to see some of the roots in it. I will tell you that this one plant that we transplanted into this cup is 3 times the size of the little plants that are growing in smaller containers. So we've given it the space it needs. And then Rob has pulled up a picture on the other side of a bean plant, similar, couple of seeds where you can really see those white roots growing along on the side, and he's showing you that. So again, this is a wonderful way of showing what's above and what's below. And although we eat the beans that grow above the soil, really it's dependent upon the health of the roots that grow below the soil. So great way of showing, understanding the whole process of growth.
Yeah. Did you want to show the cup? Because I could cut to
Yeah,
you.
I would love to. Let me show the
Okay.
difference between ones that are just growing. Okay. So this is an example of lettuce. There is both red lettuce and yellow lettuce that are grown in what we call a 6-pack. And these were, I put the seeds in the soil on January 17th. They germinated. They started to grow about 6 days later. Look at the size of those. And then I will show you the size of our one here in our root view cup, which is 3 times the size. The other thing that's really interesting when you're doing this type of an experiment is an understanding that the first leaves that a plant produces are strictly to produce food for the emergent seedling. And once they've utilized, given up all their food, they turn yellow and die. That happens in every plant. So real quickly, I'm just going to show you, if I don't get this all over the computer, some onion seedlings that I've started. And the onion seedlings, you can even see the seed head is attached, seed coat is attached to it.
Oh,
But there's yellowing that's occurring on the first leaf that has come up because it's given up all its food energy. And once that happens, it dies, and the true leaves are developed with the green. So a fascinating way of also introducing the idea that leaves produce food for the plant.
And that starts with the seed itself, has the energy.
The seed, whereas everything was inside the seed.
Right. And then as it grows, those leaves become.
The leaves become food producing machines. Right.
It's great.
So thank you for allowing that. Okay.
Oh yeah, sure. So that's an activity. And at the end, what we're going to do is just see which activities you like the most or which ones you want to try, because we'd love to get your feedback on that. So let's look at some other activities we can do. And these are activities that, as we're getting ready to transition. I went for a walk today before the webinar, just to get kids excited about garden season and getting them out to the garden. Here's some activities that we collected that help to set the stage for kids. So seed germination mix. Judy?
So one of the things that it's really important to know, like when we're growing any seeds, we don't grow them in outdoor soil. And just getting kids, so a seed germination mix or a mix that we use to start seeds growing does not have any outdoor soil in it at all. It actually has a mix of that white large material, which is called perlite, which is a volcanic type of rock, and another smaller white material called vermiculite, and also some type of peat moss in it. And the peat moss that is used in the seed starting mix is called sphagnum peat moss. And it's a renewable resource. And you can see some of that plant material on the left side, where you can see some different types of the middle material, which is lighter brown, might come from coconut fiber called coir. Then the next one, the larger one down, is perlite. And then that material on the bottom is vermiculite. So all these materials, and for children to feel them, they feel very light. And sometimes what the kids like to do, I know my grandkids love to take the perlite and pop them because it's a popped volcanic rock. So to feel how light they are, and when you wet it, their hands don't really get dirty versus an outside soil mix. It doesn't stick to their hands. So as they're feeling this seed germination mix, it's a great way of telling them that all these things produce the process of allowing water to go down in the soil. It's to allow a whole bunch of air to go down in the soil, and also to provide a mix that allows the seedlings to grow quickly. So aeration and drainage and water staying in the soil, a little bit absorbing, but not too much is really important. These seed starting mixes are also sterile, meaning they don't introduce things like, you can expand this to say, why might we not want to bring in soil from the outside and put it in our seed starting mix? What type of things might be in soil? So to even go on a soil hunt, dig it up, and to find things like, there's rocks, there might be some trash in there. There might even be beetle eggs or something, or slugs, or things that we don't want in our mix. There might be some diseases in it. There might even be broken glass in it. So to have a mix that is nice and sterile and not going to introduce diseases, that will allow those seeds to grow really quickly, is pretty important. And kids, I think one of the best things they love to do is to feel things. So the feeling of a seed starting mix is, you may not even get to plant the seed. That's all they want to do, is feel that.
Now, Judy, what about like on a big scale farm? Do they use a germination mix, or how does that work on a large farm?
So on a large scale farm, if they're doing large scale seed starting inside, they're probably going to use a mix that has got some composted bark in it, versus they might even use some mushroom compost in it. So, but most of the large scale, certainly all the large scale greenhouses, are really attuned to sterility, to making sure that what they plant is going to grow.
Okay. Okay.
Certainly on top, I will say this, if you're at all using soil in a seed mix for growing things, that should be at the bottom of the container. And then when the seeds grow, they can grow down into the soil. But the top part of that mix should always be a sterile mix.
Interesting. I didn't know. I learned something. I always learn something when I work with Judy.
As do I with.
I've got to actually, we're going to talk about sand, soil, and clay, but I got to run. I'll be right back. So Judy, if you want to talk about, we got a visitor?
No, people that are helping me feed animals.
Oh,
so
good.
Just another exploration of soil. Basically garden soil is a mix. The soil that we have in our yard is a mix of different particles that come from different types of rock. And certainly in the Denver area, we have soils that are mostly clay. And clay comes from a different type of rock that has got very fine particles in it. So it's hard to water. It feels really sticky. So Rob, do you have the sample of clay there?
I do. So let me stop the slides here. You can see, I think you can see, let me get tilted out there. So can you see it there?
So clay has got the finest soil particles. It feels sticky when it's wet. And actually you can do a pretty neat thing. If you moisten it enough, you can actually make a soil worm with it. So there's not that much moisture in it.
It's pretty dry.
Yeah, this has been around for a while, but with enough moisture, the kids can actually, if it's a high percentage of clay, you can roll it out or compress it to a 4 to 6 inch ribbon or a worm. And then make the connection that if I start my seeds indoors in that, it's really hard. So clay feels, it feels really sticky when it's wet. When it dries, it cracks. Another activity that you can do with clay with kids is to actually moisten it a lot. And then if you don't want to make worms out of it, you can say, let's see if we can construct a house with it. And you can actually make bricks out of clay, and it dries just like adobe brick. On the other end of the soil, sand boxes that kids play in, you can actually feel those individual particles, and they feel grainy. That's the largest soil particle. So allowing children to rub large sand particles between their hands, to run water through sand and find out, the water runs through really quickly. It drains really quickly. But because it drains really quickly too, everything drains out of it. The water goes out, the nutrients go out, and it's sterile. It doesn't give any food to the germinating, to the growing seed. So you get an introduction to my dog walking through the house, right? This is Ava, probably Ava walking through, not barking right now.
Ava, yes.
Clay, which we have typically in the Denver area, which cracks and dries and it's hard to water. Clay gives a lot of nutrients, a lot of food to the soil, but it's just allowing kids to make mud pies with clay is wonderful. You can also extend it to making mud pies and then later on in the season, taking some flower petals and putting them in and make decorations with that and dry it. So allowing them to experience the sensory feel of different soils is wonderful, just like the growing mix. And then one of our favorites.
Yes.
So again,
seed
thank
tape.
you, Zia. So now we're cooking. You didn't know that we can cook with seeds, did you? So this is something that you can do at home. And these are called seed tapes. And we're going to walk you through the process. We're just using some flour, and that's step number one. So just like you would make a gravy, you make a thickening paste. Well, we don't usually measure. We just dump out flour into a container, and you can use a stick or a spoon, whatever. You mix it up until it becomes a thin paste, okay? And then we're gonna see, then we've taken a strip of black and white newspaper. I don't usually measure how much. One strip, or I probably would have used 2 strips of newspaper together. And then we're gonna do a blob. It's just a blob of paste that's spaced out about 2 inches. And you can use anything. You can use the end of a paintbrush. You can use a Q-tip. You can use a sharp pencil point to dip into that paste and blob it on. And then you can just measure out 1 inch or 2 apart. And you could say, okay, I need another blob down here. And she's putting another blob down there. Make your blobs of paste first. And then ideally you want 1 or 2 lettuce seeds on each blob, knowing that we're working with small children. It doesn't always work that way. So sometimes we get a bunch of seeds. But the idea is this is a way of pre-spacing small seeds like lettuce. So some of these have got more than 1 or 2 seeds on it, but then what you can do is you dry it, you let that dry, and when you're ready to plant, this is a way of saying, instead of planting everything at once, you can cut those strips of newspaper and say, my family might eat, 4 salads a week. So you can cut off strips in the size that will feed your family. So you're not planting everything at once. And when you plant these, the whole thing, the newspaper, the flour and water paste, and the seeds gets planted about 1/4 of an inch below the surface, covered up with some nice soft soil and watered. So it's a way of spacing out your planting season. And then when the newspaper, of course, being paper, breaks down, it adds nutrients to the soil. And you have somewhat pre-spaced seeds, or it's easier. The kids love to participate in this whole process. This works really well for planting seeds that are small, like lettuce, or I even use it for carrots. It's wonderful for carrots, for spacing them out. And like Rob noticed at the end, don't use newspaper with colored ink or shiny paper ads, because those might have chemicals in it that we don't want in. But black and white newspaper is fine. Fun. And one of my favorite books of all, again, going along with the theme that things go on, not just grow. So Rob talked about a book beforehand with the hare and bear, where they were getting the part that lived above the soil and a part that lives below the soil. And this is exposing children to the idea that life is an integrated, that whole cycle of life is not only plants that grow, but things that help plants grow. So it involves insects and other things. So for an example, down in the dirt is a whole busy world of earthworms and insects, digging and building and stirring up soil. They're already working down in the dirt. So they're getting us ready for planting and loosening. Down in the dirt, pill bugs. You just mentioned pill bugs, roly-polies for kids. You got them hooked for the season underneath the leaves. Down in the dirt, pill bugs chew through last year's leaves. I give a gentle poke. They roll up tight and hide in plated suits of armor, roly-poly round. My grandson continues to go on roly-poly hunts in the
Mhm.
cracks of sidewalks at the age of 7. It's his favorite thing in the garden. I think we had another picture that shows that. And then up in the garden, carrot plants sprout, pea blossoms bloom, wasps are on the prowl, and honeybees visit, their legs loaded with pollen. So what a wonderful way to get kids into the cycle of growth, that it's the roots underground, the worms loosening the soil, the roly-polies chewing the leaves, and then up on top, if we actually do get things to grow and bloom, it takes insects like bees to pollinate the flowers to get the actual fruit. Do we have one more picture about that? And then, of course, down in the dirt, that robin's beat finds a cricket, a beetle, a grub, and slugs are scrumptious too. So it brings into mind that all of life in a garden is precious, that it's a united cycle, and that each has an important part to play. And if you want to get kids into insects, into gardens, then you're going to stress things that crawl and that wiggle and that creep and roll up into balls, because that's the best way of stimulating the things. Some of the things that we find just kind of yucky are the things that kids find most exciting.
So we have to finish, we have a couple of art activities. So Judy, you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, again, thanks to Zia. So the trees on the right-hand side of the page are actually, we used Zia's arm, and when Zia's arm became the tree trunk, we just traced that, and then I had her spread her fingers, and she made branches. And you can use anything. You can do this seasonally. So we even expanded this to show, because we didn't have green, so we showed her that when you mix blue and yellow, we used finger paint, it makes green. And she actually let me know when we needed to add more yellow to make it more green. So you can use your fingers, you can use a paintbrush, you can use bubble wrap, whatever to make the leaves. And then in the spring, I'd use some pink or white to show the blossoms coming out. You know, whatever it is. In autumn, the leaves change color. What a wonderful way of showing kids that a tree is full of life, basically. It's not just leaves.
It's a fun one.
It's a really fun one. I love it.
Yeah. And then our final activity is earth art. And I actually did this with a bunch of teachers at a workshop. There were about 30 teachers, and I went to Judy's garden, and we pulled dry grasses, pine cones, coneflower, dried, you name it, we pulled it, and a few from my small little garden as well. And the object of this is for people to make out of those things, to make a art piece. And so I put containers of all these different things, and people gathered about 20 pieces of things that they wanted to turn into art. They had their own space to create it. And these are some of the examples of things that they made. The one on the upper corner there, Brandon, this one teacher, he'd found a bunch of trash and turned it into a trash Christmas tree. But, here we have, like I said, pine leaves, and just a whole variety of things. If you do this with younger kids, you might want to have like a roped off area, a circle to mark where they're going to put their earth art. But it's just a way for them to connect to the earth, to express themselves through art, and to use natural objects as a way of doing that. The next piece that we did, you can decide whether or not for younger kids, the really young ones, but we had everybody take their art piece, collect all the materials, and then without saying a word, they had to have a silent time where they all collectively used all the pieces from their own artwork and create one big collective art piece. And it was just a nice reflective activity. Came out really pretty. I brought all my rocks from my house, and so they used all of them in there, and all my little rocks, not like big ones and everything like that. So this is an example of earth art, and we're going to actually do this at the School Garden Summit. I'm excited to do that. So those are our activities that we did for today. And I'm going to open up a poll that lists all these uh, activities. Let me launch the, so choose, so you should be able to see the poll. Can you see the poll, Laura? Is it showing?
I can't see it, but I think it's because I'm in the same account.
Oh, that's right. Well, I think people are starting to vote, so I think they can see it. So which activity do you think you'll most likely try? And you can pick and choose, it's multiple choice. So pick the ones you most likely will want to try. We would just want to get a sense of which ones are the most like, oh, I want to give that a go, you know, sort of thing. All right, a couple more seconds. I can tell you already, people are really keen on the root view cups there, Judy.
It's fun. Those are
Yeah.
fun.
And that, what an easy thing to do, really, you know, and that gives you a full sense of what's happening underground. And, you know, and they can make predictions about it, right? Yeah. So let's end the poll and I will share the results. So it looks like garden creatures, root view cups, sea tapes. Okay, all right. Well, we will provide you with information about all these activities and the recording. We really appreciate you coming today. And it would be really wonderful if you could fill in our survey. And let me type it in the chat here, tinyurl.com/ECE webinars. So if you hit that link, fill out the survey, give us some feedback. We're going to be back in March 16th. Seeds that we eat, we're going to have it from that cultural and eating food perspective. This will be a good webinar. So yeah, I look forward to that. Michaela, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Bill, the YMCA will get some garden draw. Oh, you're from the YMCA. That's great, Bill. Amma, it's our pleasure. Thank you for your time as well. So next webinar, as Laura said, is March 16th. We'll have a special one on garlic. Judy always scratches her head. Why are we talking about garlic in the spring? Because it really doesn't grow in the spring. But National Garlic Day, if you didn't know, is April 6th. So that's why we're celebrating it.
Well, it does. No, but let me say, it does grow in the spring, but we harvest it in the fall.
We harvest it in the fall. So, yeah. Well, point well taken. Yeah, it does grow. I mean, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you all for coming. We loved having your participation.
Yeah, it's been great. So we'll see you again on March 16th. Indira, thank you for the interpretation. And yeah, everyone have a lovely evening. Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Adios.
Right.
Adios.